It often pains me to see some of the excruciating mistakes that lower elo mid lane players make. How dare you guys not play this game 12 hours a day for a living? The reason it pains me though is that a ton of the bad habits or mistakes being made are so easy to fix. Just by watching this video, you will probably never make these mistakes again. You're not going to need 100 hours of practice to implement what I'm going to teach you. Instead, I'm going to cover some really bad mistakes that you're very likely making and how good players avoid messing these things up with super easy to apply concepts. Learning how to improve shouldn't always be some long, arduous struggle. I want you guys to improve quickly and effectively without feeling like you have to make League your day job. So if you find what I discuss in this video helpful, then you should check out our mid lane courses over at Skill Count. We have a dedicated mid lane course that talks about everything from laning phase to late game, macro, and so on, all teaching you what actually matters as efficiently as possible. We also have a really useful counter course that covers how to deal with some of the most annoying mid laners in the game, so if you're ever versus one of these annoying champions, you just pop this course open and get some super useful counter tips as you're loading into the game. And that's on top of all our other courses on mechanics, farming, trading, and more. So if you do find this guide helpful, make sure to use the link below to get a discount for access to all of that great information. And if you don't actively improve using our service, you do get your money back, no questions asked, so there's no risk. Anyway, let's get back to the guide, and I wanted to start with something really simple. This mistake may not seem crazy important, but it can set you up for failure at the start of a laning phase, and honestly, it just bugs me that so many of you do this. Like 80% of players mess this up when it's such a simple fix. A really bad habit I notice all the time is players tunnel visioning on unlocking their entire kit at level 3. Keep in mind, most champions have a pretty mediocre ability in their kit, at least early on. Victor W, Anivia Wall, Lyssandra's Claw, Lux's Shield, and so on. The first few levels are the only point in the game where mana management is really important. Before you've stacked Mana Flow and bought Lost Chapter, you do have mana issues. That is especially true now that they remove mana biscuits so bad players can't just mindlessly spam their spells during the laning phase. I don't get to say this enough, that was a good change. Thank you, Riot. The concept you need to understand is that the mana efficiency of your spells goes up dramatically each point you put into them. Spells start off dealing really bad damage for the mana cost, but become much more efficient with each rank up. So the bad habit I see all the time from lower elo players is unlocking all 3 spells instantly, like this Xerath. That was so much mana invested for how little damage his spells were doing. What you'll notice that good players do is that the second they hit level 3, they don't immediately skill something up. As you can see here, Chobi's just holding it. This gives you the option to consider whether you actually need your utility spell or whether you can go for a second point in your main spell. In this specific case, because Chobi was so close to his tower, he knew he could afford not having his dash until level 4. A key detail to keep in mind is that this isn't as dangerous as you think. You hit level 3 on the 3rd wave and 4 on the 4th wave anyway, so you're going to be down your utility spell for like 30 seconds. Probably going to be fine. This is a really consistent mistake that I see all the time. It may not seem like a big deal, but casting mana inefficient spells this early into the lane can sometimes run you out of mana, which can obviously lose you the lane, or your trade is less efficient for no reason. Also, of course, on champions like Fizz or Zed, you should unlock your full kit at level 3. This tip is mostly for mages with a utility spell. And here is an extra really fun bonus tip. I love sharing this little trick anytime I see the opportunity. If you're about to rank up a spell, you should know that you can do so mid-air. For example, if I use level 1 Ziggs Q, I deal this much damage. But if I cast a level 1 Ziggs Q and I level up the spell mid-air, it will deal the ranked up damage. The benefit of doing this is that you use the mana cost of the previous rank, which saves you a total of 5 to 10 mana like 3 times each laning phase. I know that value is crazy, right? Okay, that wasn't a hard tip to implement. Let's do a trickier concept. This next habit is probably one of, if not literally, the best habit I ever built in this game. It is absurdly useful. Alright, I'm gonna give you a test. I want you to see if you also make this bad decision that I notice all the time. You don't need much context, here's what you need to know. Syndra just killed a soul and is pushing mid after the fact. Looking at her positioning, Syndra is considering roaming the top lane. That's because Volibear is pushing very aggressively. Let me give you some info to decide whether you would roam or not to kill this Volibear. Syndra has 0 grubs, so pushing the tower is kinda slow. The enemy team also have a level 7 Nocturne who has ult soon. Kinda scary with no flash on Syndra. There's no vision in the river either. Aurelion Sol is also spawning in a couple of seconds from now. This is also all very misleading information. What would you do based on what I've shown you? Roaming is the wrong answer here. Let's watch what happens first. Syndra commits to helping out her Jax, but since she roamed in full vision, Volibear walks away. Who would have thought, right? Then, as she tries to get back to mid lane, she's spotted in the river. Nocturne and Aurelion gang up on her, and she dies. That was obviously a bad play, but why was it bad? If we go back to this moment, there's a really simple reason that Syndra shouldn't roam that any good player would have instantly spotted, and that's this wave right here. This is why she died. Because waves are mirrored on both sides, Syndra should have been aware that there is an enemy wave right about here. All she had to do was clear that before moving. The reason things went poorly is that Aurelion's soul got back and pushed the wave. Now there's 6 minions going to Syndra's tower. So when her roam backfired, she felt really pressured to get back to lane ASAP. If she doesn't, she's gonna lose all that farm, right? And as a result, her actions are predictable and exploitable because she needs to get back to mid lane. So she dies. I want you to imagine the scenario where Syndra just takes the time to push that wave before moving. She then does the exact same play. I don't care, you don't need perfect macro to climb. Volibear walks away, same as before because the roam is bad, but now there's no wave mid, so Syndra would have felt no pressure to immediately get back to mid. She would now have the option to recall and just go back to mid through the safety of her own base. This is genuinely one of the best habits you can ever learn. I instinctively, before anything I do in this game, look at where my own wave is to know where the enemy one is, and I make decisions based off that. Gonna stay for this next wave. You see this wave coming in here, so I know there's a wave about to be here, so that's why I'm gonna stay here. What you do with that information doesn't matter to me. Like I said, I don't expect you to play perfect, but if you're always thinking about where the next wave is, your decision making will improve naturally. Good players, before almost every single decision they make, look at where that next wave is. That's for laning, mid, and late game. It doesn't matter. You should just build this habit. Trust me. Whether it's early into the game or late game, it doesn't really matter. Building the habit to always look at your own wave to know where the enemy one is will be insanely useful. Build the habit, trust me. And speaking of habits, another really bad mistake I notice all the time is players underestimating their own wave clear. Mid is the role with the best wave clear in the game, but players don't use that in their decision making. This is a really simple mistake, but you need to stop making it. As you can see, the Veigar crashes a wave at Fizz's tower and then starts roaming towards top. Fizz clears the wave at his tower and then follows the Veigar. This is honestly a bad decision for multiple reasons, but none of that actually matters. In fact, you don't need to learn those reasons to climb. I am someone who advocates for autopilot decision making. I personally don't like running through all the variables like, well, this guy has flash and they're here and they have this much HP and vision and win condition, tempo, priority, blah 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 blah. That's honestly not how most challenger players climb most of the time. Personally, I advocate that you make decisions that will yield a positive result almost regardless of what happens. And in this case, the reason it was so bad for Fizz to follow Veigar is because he could have just pushed this wave nearly instantly. As Fizz, if you haven't based and you're sitting on Doran's ring, at level 5 your E will leave the minions at this much HP, so your wave clear is still kinda slow. But Fizz already had Lost Chapter and a Dark Seal, so his E would deal this much damage to the wave. Pushing that wave would have taken like 5 seconds or so. Remember this, I want you to take note of this. If you are level 5 and you have base for either AP, like Amp Tome plus Dark Seal or Blasting Wand, or attack damage like 2 long swords or a pickaxe, you should follow this advice. It is a hard rule that I personally follow that if a wave is pushing away from you and you've hit level 5 with some components, you should never collapse before pushing. The average mid laner's wave clear is so fast at this point in the game that it is almost always correct to push to fix your wave before leaving your lane. By pushing, Fizz puts himself into an amazing position. The wave would have crashed and will be bouncing back towards his side of the lane. Because of that, he could have done whatever he wanted. He could have cross-mapped and gone bot while Veigar went top lane. He could have also looked to follow Veigar's roam now, even if he's a little late. He might even be able to catch him in the river trying to come back to mid. This would be similar to the Syndra example we saw a little earlier. Or he can do whatever he wants. Screw it, go to the bathroom and pee. Turn on Love is Blind. I'm told I should be watching that. It doesn't really matter what you do. 95% of the time, you will get some positive result just by instantly shoving a wave while your opponent leaves lane. Good players don't hesitate on this. We really don't care. My laner roamed, good luck buddy, I'm gonna push. You need to utilize the fact that you are a mid laner. You push waves really fast. Instead, Fizz follow the roam and watch mid lane this entire time. As he's running about doing whatever, that wave looks so gross. And then he starts helping at Grubs for some reason and oh god. I mean, at least he got Camille, I guess, but look at the wave Veigar went back to. I would trade my top laner for a wave this juicy any day of the week. By the way, fun little side note, in this very specific circumstance, technically it was wrong for Fizz to push here. I didn't actually catch this until I had finished writing this part of the script. Why is he maxing Q? I really don't get it. Emerald is truly an elo bracket. And speaking of Emerald elo gameplay, let's move forward to another game and watch this really intense fight. Qiyana looks to engage on Azir, completely whiffing her ultimate, and yeah, she is forced out of lane. Well played, Azir. For our final tip, what happens next is a really bad mistake I'll teach you how to avoid. Azir, after winning the fight, overstays for a turret plate, as one does, and then Qiyana gets back to lane right after he gets it. Obviously this is bad. I don't have to tell you why this is bad. Let's watch what happens first though. Azir is now stuck in lane with less resources. Qiyana, off a fresh base with full HP and more items, finishes Azir off with a sloppy but effective combo, I guess. It goes without saying that greeting and overstaying in lane is going to result in moments like these. But Azir really wanted gold for his Nashor's Tooth. So how do you know whether you can actually stay in lane or not? How do good players get away with greeting for that extra gold? It's actually really simple. You just have to play the game for tens of thousands of hours. If you watch streams or educational commentaries or whatnot, you've at some point probably heard a challenger player try to flex their knowledge like this. Okay guys, watch this. They're gonna be back in lane in 3, 2, 1. Whew, aren't I just the smartest player ever? The problem is that we've played the game so much, and I mean so much, that we kind of just know how long we have to stay in lane. Most of us just go off of vibes, which obviously isn't very useful for you. So let's do some simple calculations which can help you out. From the center of the fountain to walk back to mid lane with tier 2 boots, it takes about 22 seconds. If you buy tier 1 boots, it takes about 23 seconds or so, and it takes about 25 seconds without boots. The number I want you to remember though is 30, and that's because a recall takes 8 seconds plus 22, and you get 30, of course. So let's go back to our Azir. Qiyana goes into the Fog of War base, and we can assume that she starts recalling at around 850 or so. And would you believe it, 30 seconds later, she arrives back in lane. This number can change based on a champion's base movement speed, their mobility, or whether they had to heal or not, but keep things easy for yourself. 30 seconds will be a really simple number to remember, and is the average amount of time it'll take a champion to get back to lane. This way you can make better informed decisions whether you want to stay in lane or not. You'll know whether you have time to greed for a plate or whether you need to get out ASAP. From there, your decision making is going to naturally improve. I do hope you found some of these tips new and helpful, but if you really do want to improve, I still recommend that you sign up for our courses over at SkillCap. We have way more detailed mid lane courses that will help you improve dramatically fast. If you pair that with all our other courses on mechanics, countering specific champions, and so on, you will definitely find a ton of value to help you improve. And again, if you don't improve when actively using our service, you just get your money back, no questions asked. So if you're interested, use the link in the description below for a nice discount. And that's going to be a wrap on this video. Stop making these bad mistakes and your games will feel a lot easier. See you next time.